Okay.
Penelope. How many people are expected to see this movie? 600 men. Penelope. Alright, my viewers, listen closely. Boom, boom, boom. Tonight we'll watch Nolan's movie.
2 days later.
I was underwhelmed.
Yeah, you're better off watching Epic the Musical instead. Now, the movie itself is not entirely terrible, but it's not a good movie in my eyes. It's not as terrible as many of us fear to be, but it's still far from Christopher Nolan's best movie. Christopher Nolan's adaptation of this classic poem by Homer had been anticipated for quite some time. When people first heard about it, people were rather excited about this highly prolific director from Hollywood taking on such an epic tale. Others were cautious, but then as time went on, word went around about controversial casting decisions to not hire any Greek actors and actresses and have a myriad of people of different cultures to stand in for the Greek culture. For many people, this was already a red flag that this movie was not going to adhere faithfully to the source material, but instead was going to appeal to contemporary kickboxing. Now at this point, people will say, oh, but it is a faithful adaptation, specifically to the Emily Wilson version of the Odyssey. Emily Wilson's version of the Odyssey being highly contemporary and divisively politicized and therefore not exactly accurate to the source material. That is the version that Christopher Nolan apparently decided to adapt. Help! Never mind the Greek accurate translation by Richmond Lattimore. No. Let's just cause a lot of needless drama just to get some press. This just in, side note, Christopher Nolan has butchered the character of Odysseus in this adaptation so much that not even Emily Wilson herself likes this adaptation of the Odyssey, which was based on her translation. Good grief, how much do you have to butcher the source material if even Emily Wilson doesn't like it? Taking out Odysseus's hubris is antithetical to Homer's Odyssey. Odysseus is meant to be this proud trickster. Having him be traumatized via PTSD doesn't really make sense. It clashes with the source material. Even if you make the argument that this is a different character, this version of Odysseus still does certain things that the original Odysseus did. It not only leads to conflicting characteristics, but it puts more validity into the idea that Nolan's just going through the motions when it comes to the essential story beats of the Odyssey. This version of Odysseus would not have shot an arrow back at the Cyclops out of spite, and yet he does so in this movie anyway, just because Nolan had to have Odysseus do it as an essential story beat, even though it doesn't make sense for this version of Odysseus. Rumors continue to spread of more baffling decisions on part of Christopher Nolan, in that he was wanting it to be historically grounded with period-accurate music, but at the same time he would implement a rap artist, a contemporary rap artist with a few contemporary flares into the music. And for a film that's supposedly meant to be historically grounded, it is very much ingrained into contemporary ideas?
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
The overall approach was already an absolute disaster from the get-go. Now, here's something I want to make clear. There is nothing wrong with a stylized take on a story if done right. For example, Epic the Musical is a very stylized take on the Odyssey, which has very contemporary approaches to its storytelling. And yet people love Epic the Musical. The creator of Epic the Musical took inspiration from Lin-Manuel Miranda's Hamilton, which was also a highly stylized contemporary take on a historical story. People love Hamilton and Epic the Musical because they are stylized.
People don't go into Lin-Manuel Miranda's Hamilton and Epic the Musical expecting a historically grounded take. Nobody does that. They go in expecting a stylized, fun take on historical stories. But with Nolan's adaptation of the Odyssey, he's claiming to make it grounded, but he's also intermixing contemporary stuff. I'm sorry, Christopher Nolan, you can't have your cake and eat it too in this way. If you're going to make a story historically grounded, people are going to critique you for any and all inaccuracies that deviate from being historically grounded. I'm sorry. That's just the way it works.
Whilst I bring up this side note, a lot of people were distracted by the American accents in Christopher Nolan's Odyssey, and yet other people on the internet have said, how come you complain about American accents in this movie, but you don't complain about the American accents in a movie like Amadeus, which you really love? To address that, I would say, firstly, yeah, it is valid to say that Amadeus did have actors with American accents in that movie. In Amadeus, that was a minor problem. In Christopher Nolan's Odyssey, the American accents are a minor problem on top of other problems that already permeate throughout this movie. I should also note that the movie Amadeus was not self-aggrandizing. The cast and crew members, from what I recall, were not that particularly picky when it comes to the details and whatnot. They just wanted to tell a really good story. Christopher Nolan, on the other hand, was constantly aggrandizing himself on how he cares about the details and this and that. And whilst, yeah, I do give him credit for his ability to have convincing practical effects, when it comes to his claims about historical immersion, I'm sorry, Christopher Nolan, your self-aggrandizing of your case of historical immersion, it's a lie. That's why you have so many people pointing out any and all flaws, because you set up that premise in the first place.
Nolan, if you're going to have a stylized take on historical periods akin to the Vinland Saga Japanese series, then go all the way with it. The way you've approached this story just makes it incredibly awkward.
It was awkward.
So obviously, if you're going in expecting this movie to be faithful to the poem established by Homer himself, as translated by Richmond Lattimore and other faithful translators, prepare to be disappointed, because for whatever reason, this movie stretches certain scenes to the point of exhaustion, but then skips past other scenes and essential character growths that were essential in Homer's poem. The film just stretches on and on and on, and there's little in the way of substance. Yes, I do appreciate Christopher Nolan going out of his way to work on his strengths that he's established in his previous movies with his visual cinematography, and certainly the film does have its merits, with the actors and actresses giving it their all. A few particular scenes do stand out as genuinely well done, with, albeit not always done perfectly. The Cyclops scene was intense, with Odysseus and his men encountering this menacing monster. The Circe scene is outright body horror with extremely well done practical effects. The siren scene was very intriguing to watch. Certain performances like Anne Hathaway's Penelope do stand out, and albeit fairly poorly lit, the last fight scene was quite intense. The film does have merit in showcasing spectacle, but when you look at the entire thing, it's a shallow spectacle. Yes, it's visually and technically impressive, but it lacks the substance of Homer's poem. It lacks the human reflection that permeated throughout Homer's Odyssey. During essential emotional scenes, characters seem to just go through the motions for the most part, without any proper emotional reflection, and this is one of Christopher Nolan's biggest weaknesses as a director. You can really tell that Christopher Nolan really excelled as a director when he had Jonathan Nolan backing him up with writing the screenplays. It's very much akin to how George Lucas only became a great film director because his wife at the time really contributed to the writing of A New Hope. It's because Christopher Nolan had writing backup that his past films really do stand out. I mean, I really do appreciate Christopher Nolan as a director. Two of my all-time favorite movies were made by Christopher Nolan, The Prestige and The Dark Knight. I adore those movies. And Christopher Nolan is a smart man, but evidently, being smart is not the same as being wise. Sure, he's got his own smart take on using this film as a Trojan horse, if you will, to display these contemporary ideas that he wants to convey, but he's not wise in the overall approach of depicting the Odyssey. Albert Einstein once said, "Smart people solve problems, wise people avoid them." Certain ideas may have been smartly conveyed in this movie, but it would have been much more wiser to portray them in a nuanced way through a faithful adaptation of the Odyssey. It would have led to far less division. With that said, something you need to keep in mind with this adaptation is that I've seen a whole myriad of mixed reactions, not just from the shills who will just blindly clap like seals to any corporate decision, even at their own expense. I'm also noticing positive reactions from trusted sources. One of the YouTube critics I look up to, Jeremy Jans, gave Nolan's Odyssey a positive review. I can completely understand why he'd say that. And in turn, I would completely understand why people would give a positive remark for this movie. So, unless you're one of those blind corporate shills, I'm not gonna scold you over liking this movie. I completely understand why people like this version of the Odyssey, especially given my appreciation for Christopher Nolan's other movies. But my days, this film is so overhyped. You've got these shills on the internet saying, "Oh, it's the best movie ever, 100 out of 100. No, it's not the best movie of the year. The claim for best movie of 2026 painstakingly clearly goes to Project Hail Mary.
Hi, Grace.
And Curry Barker's Obsession.
Yes.
Amazing.
You're saying that Nolan's Odyssey is the best movie this year? Oh, come on, get out of here. If you're familiar with Nolan's other movies, listen to your subconscious. You know this isn't Christopher Nolan's best movie. Not even close. The Dark Knight alone is so rewatchable and contains such philosophical depth. The Prestige has such an investing story about pride, as well as a plot twist that's so genius, I dare not give it away here. People in the comment section don't even think about spoiling that movie. Inception has a brilliant concept about exploring the depths of the mind, as well as having one of the best ambiguous endings ever made. Memento has a very cleverly constructed non-linear story. Christopher Nolan can do better. Christopher Nolan has done better. Christopher Nolan should know better. But alas, this movie is but a series of contemporary ideas that are incoherently paced. The pacing of this movie is such a slog to get through, and there's certain plot beats that are just skimmed over. What's going on with Helen of Troy's facial scars? Never fully explored in depth. Why is Calypso so deeply devoted to Odysseus? Never explored in depth. Interactions with the gods? Never explored in depth. In fact, the gods don't show up in this movie. Even though we clearly see the Cyclops, who's the son of Poseidon, Circe the witch, who works by another god's power, we see the sirens and other supernatural forces trying to take down Odysseus and his 600 men. 600 men. Is Christopher Nolan trying to depict the Greek gods like how George R.R. Martin depicted the gods of Westeros, in that their very nature is ambiguous, and if they are there, they are so distant from humanity they don't bother to interact with them on an impersonal, deistic kind of basis? That kind of approach doesn't work for Homer's Odyssey. It's entrenched in the Greek mythological pantheon, where the gods and goddesses get directly involved with humanity, with all their pettiness involved. In fact, part of the reason why the entire Odyssey exists is because Poseidon, the god of the sea, is vowing vengeance and so is delaying his way home. And that's hardly ever touched upon, apart from this one scene where Odysseus must take a leap of faith to go through a storm that barely lasts for about a minute's worth of screen time. Oh my days, just kidding me? Might as well bring this comparison up. Go watch Epic the Musical instead. That has more scenes of Poseidon directly interacting and antagonizing with Odysseus. Get in the water. So much potential for character depth, just gone.
All of these years of planning, wasted!
With Athena, I get that Nolan was taking a clever approach with, spoiler alert, this guilt projection that Odysseus has due to his previous engagement with Troy. I suppose that does make sense, but at the same time, Odysseus frequently mentions, oh, the gods are so ambiguous to understand. The gods are clearly communicating to you in a very clear way. How much lotus flower weed have you been smoking? There are character interactions in this movie which are touched upon, but again, don't really go that much in depth. There's this whole plot point where Telemachus Parker goes across the sea to talk to Punisher of Sparta about where his dad is. We do get this interesting perspective on the whole Trojan horse story, but despite how long that interaction between Telemachus Parker and Punisher of Sparta prolongs for, from what I remember, it doesn't really lead to anything significant regarding the plot. The story has a problem where scenes are really stretched out, but they don't really lead to anything much. And the film has this strange habit of telling more so than showing, which seems really bizarre coming from Christopher Nolan, because Christopher Nolan should know better that the primary approach to storytelling is show, don't tell, not tell, don't show. There is showing in this movie, but then the movie tells you what it's already shown you. There are other storytellers that can use telling as a means of conveying things, but that also comes with the showcasing of facial expressions and whatnot. Here, it's just so jarring that they tell, show, and then tell you what you've already been shown. It's so disorientating. This whole movie is so disorientating. Kind of a shame then that there's just such wasted character potential. Kudos to you, Punisher of Sparta.
You would have been one heck of a Spartan, Telemachus. Let me tell you, Telemachus. By the one time, we were in the Trojan horse. We were in the Trojan horse. We had to live through each other's pee and poo. We had to urinate and poo on each other to get into Troy. Are you making fun of me, Red? You making fun of me, Red?
Yeah, this whole movie just exists as nothing more than a Trojan horse for contemporary ideas. Whilst I mention contemporary ideas, I might as well take the time to mention some strange double standards on part of some of the cast members. For example, Lupita Nyong'o, who portrays Helen of Troy in this movie, quite rightly opposed being affiliated with the cast of The Woman King, because she knew that The Woman King was an absolute insult to African culture. But then, when she approaches a story of Greek culture, she seems to have no problem with talking down to Homer himself. Also, the guy who plays the blind tutor person in this film seems to have a problem with Chris Pratt portraying Mario, but he himself, who is not Greek, doesn't seem to have a problem with having someone like himself be cast in a Greek position. He doesn't have a problem with that. Is this movie worth seeing in IMAX? I mean, I guess there are some moments in this movie that debatably warrants the IMAX experience, but for this shallow spectacle, in hindsight, it's probably not worth it. The whole IMAX approach with this movie seems more of a gimmick than a meaningful implementation to this movie. And as visually impressive as it is to see on screen, there's other visual aesthetics that really don't complement this supposed IMAX experience. It's the fact that the majority of the costumes don't look historically grounded, and they look more like Halloween costumes. There's this prominent Roman soldier who seems more like a discount Batman than an authentic Roman soldier. I get what they were trying to go for with his character, make him seem imposing, akin to like Darth Vader. I'm sure in some other context that costume could work, but in this supposedly grounded take on the Odyssey, it just looks kind of silly.
That? It's supposed to be scary? No, it's not. It's supposed to be funny. Huh? That was really supposed to be scary? Well, it's not. It's not.
This whole movie is silly. Travis Scott has a spontaneous opening and raps in the ending, and it doesn't mesh well with this take on the Odyssey. Silly, silly, silly. Right then, get on with it. I rank Nolan's take on the Odyssey a 5 out of 12. It's far from the worst, but it's far from the best. This movie does have credit, but as it stands, it's awkward.
It was awkward.
I think the mixed reactions are really going to add to how awkward this is. Regardless, I'd be curious to hear your take on the Odyssey. Honestly, I need to get to watching that Ray Fiennes adaptation of the Odyssey called The Arrival. I've heard that adaptation's great. I'm also looking forward to that official adaptation of Epic the Musical. That's going to be great. I hope. In the meantime, ScotsThinker signing out. He of all people should know that the primary approach to storytelling is show, don't tell, not shell, don't...